being as brief as I possibly can, but I'm never that brief. So let's talk about the budget first, because really that's the defining document for the county. It's the defining document for the state, for anybody that passes a budget, because that's where our priorities lie. And so I'm happy to report that we've got a stable budget. We have enough revenue to do things that when I first got to the commission in 2017, we were broke. We did not have enough money to give raises to people. We were losing people right and left. We couldn't recruit anybody. We couldn't do anything related to community-facing economic development. It was really a challenging time. And I remember sitting next to Todd Fortune saying, what the heck, man? I mean, there's no money. Yeah, I mean, what are we doing? And said, I did not spend all the time and energy to get elected, and the voters don't expect me to not do anything. And so we then talked about the Union Terminal tax, the 0.25 of a penny that was being used for Union Terminal. We shifted that over to the general fund, and that made all the difference. And so we now have done a competitive wage study at the county so that our employees are making competitive wages compared to other counties, such as our comparative set, Franklin County, Cuyahoga County, but also Warren and Butler. We were literally losing people to Warren County and Butler County. And some of that had to do with wages. And so we are now competitive, and I'm very proud of that. We also put into place a parental leave policy. We have 8 weeks parental leave, which is pretty astounding. We came from 0 and we went to 8. But this is for parents that are either have a child or are adopting a child, for either parent to take that 8 weeks off. We think that's a really important thing. It's also a nice incentive for young people to think about the county as an employer of choice. We also have tuition reimbursement. We are giving steady raises year after year. I mean, 3%, but still dignifying the work that people do for the county. So we've turned a corner, and we are trying desperately to recruit and retain people. It is, as you all know, a very difficult job market. And we just saw that play out in the sheriff's office, where she had to have a press conference about trying to get folks to join them in the jail and on the patrols, and 911 is struggling, JFS is struggling. So it's a real issue for the county. And so we're doing what we can to make sure that the county commissioners are responding to that. We also are doing, I'm going to just hit on a couple other things related to the budget. So as I said, when you have a little bit of resource to spend on forward-thinking things and forward-facing things, economic development out in the jurisdictions is way up on my list. So there are 49 jurisdictions in Hamilton County, the city being one, and then there are 48 others. And so we want to be partners with the county community and other jurisdictions when it comes to economic development and revitalization of both the residential areas, also the commercial areas and the business districts. And so we are doing small grants out in the community. We set aside $3 million. Actually, it was 1.5 to begin with, but the need was so great and we had so many applications, we increased it to 3. So this $3 million is set aside every year. The communities apply and we push it out, and we're trying very hard to make sure that there's a diversity amongst those that are receiving the grants. So they're from all over the county. They're large, Anderson Township, or it could be as small as Cheviot. And so we're trying to, again, be good partners in that space. We also help with shared services and many different other things like buying salt and maintaining fire hydrants. But this economic development piece, I think, is really important as communities struggle to get back on their feet post-COVID, if we are post-COVID. I think we're still kind of in the middle of all that. And so we're using these grants for that. We also have some large event grants to drive big events that come into the county, things such as Blink. We also spent some money on the music festival, trying to make sure that those things thrive as well, because they drive so much of the economy for the county and for the city and generate a lot of our revenues. So let's talk about ARPA real quick. So that's budget. I also, in this past round, got some money for bike trails. I feel like this crowd might be interested in bike trails. I don't know how many of you bike. I know some of you do. I do. And so we have not been a big player. Let's be honest, the county has not played a role much in this space. And so we set aside $500,000 this year to think about bike trails, but not just connecting, because when you think about the network that exists, no offense to anybody, but most of it's on the east side, because the folks are always trying to connect piece to piece to piece. Well, if you don't build a piece on the west side or up the middle of the county, there's nothing to connect to. So you never get there, right? And so the idea is to start to think about bike trails for communities that have not seen it in the past. I am very interested in the Mill Creek corridor, primarily because it's underserved. The communities there, think about, the camp, the Fairmounts, South Cumminsville, some of these areas that have not seen a lot of investment from the city or the county, trying to spur some economic activity there, but also some sense of place, some ownership in some of the assets in the community. And so I've walked along the Mill Creek with some of the community folks, with some of the bike advocates, and there's a real connection there between what we can do for the community and access to recreation and beauty, because the Mill Creek's coming along. I know some of you have maybe an old view of the Mill Creek. You can walk there and not hold your nose anymore. It's really quite nice. There's a lot of wildlife, and they're doing a great job. There's the Mill Creek Alliance is doing that. And I want the county to partner with them to say, yes, this is an asset that's running through communities that need the investment. And so let's put our investment there. So that is up and coming, but I'm really proud of that work. That was part of the budget. So let's talk ARPA. So we got $159 million from the federal government. And we did a lot of rental. So we were just talking about rental assistance. We did a lot of that. There's still a great need. We did quite a bit of money for food insecurity. So the Free Store Food Bank got some of it. Nonprofits got quite a bit of money. We did a small business. We actually did 3 rounds of small business assistance. And so we were doing all this emergency work, right? Because there was such a need, an emergent need in the community. But we also had the capacity, because of the amount of money, to do some big things, to do some more transformational kind of things.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Just taking this off your face.
Oh.
The world is not confused as to what's happening.
Okay. The arrow was in my face. I should strategically place that. So anyway, we said to ourselves, what big things can we do? This is a once in a career opportunity. We're not going to see this kind of funding again. And so what can we do? And so we decided to put in some big transformational money and set that aside. It was about half of the amount. $40 million of that pot is going to housing. We have heard, and since I've been on the commission, we've heard over and over again about the deficit that we have, about 40,000 units of affordable housing in Hamilton County. And so we set aside $40 million. That was the largest chunk that we set aside for any one purpose. Some of it going to keep people from becoming homeless, so keep people in homes. So there's some home repair money there to keep folks in their homes as they are. About 17.5 million goes straight out to affordable housing. We've given it to CDF, the Community Development Fund. The city also put their money there. So the idea is to leverage the money together. They also are very good at drawing down the state credits, the credits for housing for the developers. And there's also some private funding that's going into CDF right now. And so the idea is to use our money to do as much by way of density as we can with housing. We've also set aside some money for special populations, those being seniors, people with disabilities, and then folks that are reentering the community from the justice system. There is not enough housing in any of those fronts. And so we carved out a little bit of that to go to those specific populations. So that gives you an idea of what we were thinking. All of this was unanimously passed by the Board of County Commissioners. And so a couple of the other pots one is related to mental health. We funded the crisis unit that moves around the community when someone is in crisis related to a mental health issue. So I think that was about 5 million. And then we also put some money towards youth programming, and we also put some towards workforce. So those are the kinds of things that we're investing in with our ARPA dollars. One caveat, I wish there was somebody from the city here because I'm bragging, but in the first round of money, so that's the ARPA, the American Rescue Plan. And by the way, all brought to you by the federal government. Right? Joe Biden and Congress were the ones that made all of that available to us, and all of that happened here locally. Before we had ARPA, though, we had the CARES money. Not everyone got the CARES money. Only entities with certain populations. So Hamilton County got it. The city of Cincinnati did not. They're not big enough. And so we got 142 million in that round, similarly purposed throughout the community. But what we realized was none of the 49 jurisdictions in Hamilton County got any money. And they needed money for masking, for gloves, for first responders, for the COVID testing. Remember, this was pretty early on in the pandemic. And so we took our money and did a lot of emergency response, but we also distributed down $25 million to the 49 jurisdictions so that they had some money of their own to respond to what they were seeing in their communities. So the city of Cincinnati got about 17 million of that because it was divvied out by population. We're the only county in the state that did it. It was in partnership. We didn't have to do it, but we felt it was really important to be honest and to be sincere about the partnership that we have with the rest of the community. So I'm really proud of that. Two other things, really three. The one is I want to talk just very briefly about some of the green initiatives that we're doing. Another place where the county, we've done quite a bit when it comes to our buildings. We've got solar panels on some of our buildings. We've retrofitted the lighting, made the windows more airtight, done some efficiency work, but we're also looking at an EV fleet and charging stations. All the garages we're building right now have charging stations in them, knowing that that's where we need to go. And so we're trying to move into the green space a little bit more proactively than we have in the past. And I'm really proud of that. We've joined an alliance that's a statewide alliance to make sure that we're listening to other good ideas. The city is ahead of us on this. And so I'm part of the Green Cincinnati group, and I will not be shy about stealing ideas from the city so that we can move forward together in a way that creates a more healthy, safe, and sustainable community, both in the city and in the county. And then lastly, the two other things that I'm very involved with. I'm the chair of the Hamilton County Addiction Response Coalition. And so we still have a crisis in our community related to addiction. Fentanyl is really the culprit. It's being mixed into many different kinds of drugs. And so people in different parts of the community are affected by this. We've got many, many people overdosing in our community still, and we're losing people, about 400 people in Hamilton County every year to addiction. I mean, I think the number is sobering and a little shocking. The national trend is heading up because of fentanyl. And so we're losing people at a very high rate nationally. We have leveled off in Hamilton County. And actually, I think what we're going to see, and I hate to say stuff like this because we don't have the final numbers in yet. I think what we're going to see, though, for last year is that our numbers are down a little bit from the year before. So that's very good news. It means that something's working in Hamilton County. And so I was telling Bill, I just came from a conference, a national conference this morning, where quick response teams have gotten together to talk about how we can save lives and get people into treatment. And so something I think that we on the HCARC are really proud of is this strategy where you've got this quick response team, somebody overdoses, and either they can take the transport to the hospital or they don't. And they're able to refuse that. And majority of them refuse the transport to the hospital. And so how do you get them, right? How do you get them into treatment? How do you connect with them? Well, that's the quick response team. And so we have the data because there's always a report that's taken. So we're collaborating between police and fire to get the data. And so we've got a team, it's a countywide initiative where a law enforcement, but also a treatment specialist goes out, knocks on the door of that individual within like a 3 to 4 day period. That's kind of the window where you can get somebody to think about going into treatment. And so they go out, knock on the door and talk to that individual and try to get them into treatment. I did one of these runs. It's probably been about a year ago. And we knocked on a door. We knocked on a few doors. Don't always get everybody willing to go in, go with the quick response team right away. But in this circumstance, a young man was there. He lived with his mom. He had 2 little kids of his own in the house. And he was struggling. And he had overdosed the night before. And these guys, the peer-to-peer was so important because he said to this guy, hey, man, you almost died last night. And you got these 2 kids that are counting on you. What are you doing? And so this guy took him a minute. His mom was standing at his side. And they said, "Are you ready?" And he said, "You know what? I'm ready." And so he literally packed a bag and we took him into the van and we took him to the engagement center and got him connected with treatment. I mean, that's what it's all about. And it takes that kind of touch, that peer-to-peer conversation to make that happen. So that's part of what the Hamilton County Addiction Response Coalition is doing. We're also distributing Narcan. We're doing a lot of pre-arrest diversion work, trying to keep people out of the Justice Center. If somebody has got an offense that is related to addiction or mental health, we're trying to create a pathway of diversion so that person doesn't go into the Justice Center and then have to have that permanent record, right, on that lives with them the rest of their lives. And so we're doing a lot of diversion work, even pre-arrest, post-arrest. We've got the drug court, which we're supporting. Then we've got pods in the jail. We've got a retrofit going on in the jail right now in partnership with the Sheriff McGuffey, $2.5 million from the state. And we've added 90 beds, but they're treatment beds. They're not cells. And so people that suffer from either addiction or mental health will be treated and dealt with in those pods. And so that's coming online probably within the next month or two. So pretty exciting work in the criminal justice realm related to addiction. And then lastly, I can't talk to anybody without talking about the Commission on Women and Girls. Because we're the only ones that have it. I was the first woman elected to the county commission. And so in 2017, we established the Commission on Women and Girls. It's 20 women and 10 girls. And the important part is, no offense to the women, the 10 girls. I mean, who gets to talk to girls about what their policy priorities are, what they want to see in Hamilton County? And so we've done some really fun work with this commission. We had a pay equity signing day where we're encouraging businesses, nonprofits, government, counties on board to sign on to a pay equity pledge where you do an analysis to make sure you're being honest about pay equity. I'm proud to say that the county's 98 cents on the dollar. So we got a little ways to go, but not much. So I'm really, and so when you ask yourself, why are we doing so well? It's collective bargaining. It's the unions. It's really interesting when you think about it. So because that's part of the solution really to equal pay for equal work. But so we've done a lot of pay equity work, and we had this signing where all these big corporations were there, and some of the little guys were there too. So that was fun. And we're going to try to do that every year in connection with the Women's Fund. We've also done quite a bit of work related to period products, having period products available in school for menstruating people. And so we are working on a bill at the state level to get the Department of Education to pay for the dispensers. It's about $1 million or so. And then have school districts incorporate the cost of the products into their budget for toilet paper or paper towels. Because you know what? That's what we're talking about. We're talking about items that are needed for everyday use. And so why wouldn't it be like toilet paper? So anyway, the girls are pretty adamant about this. They talk about it in terms of social justice and access. And they remind us that not every girl or menstruator has access to period products at home. And they often rely on the school for that. And we don't want them in the nurse's office because it's not a disease and they're not sick. They're simply having their period. So anyway, really cool work. And the girls are spearheading that. And then we also have done quite a bit of work on domestic violence. We've partnered with Women Helping Women to provide for the Divert program. The city has had it for a number of years. We're expanding it out into the county. This is when a 911 call comes in, the first responders are on scene, and it's a domestic violence situation where they need to make sure that the woman and the kids are safe. It's called Divert. So they make the call to Women Helping Women. They provide 24/7 somebody on site to take care of the woman and the kids, to make sure that they're safe and they have a safe place to go. So we had not been doing that in the county. The women and girls recommended it. The county commissioners voted on it, put it in our budget, and we're using some children's services levy funds to make that happen in Hamilton County. So some cool stuff. I mean, we're heading in the right direction. I was just saying, I was just out at the 513 relief bus launch. We've heard a lot about the 513 relief effort, and it's been ongoing for a couple of years now, but the bus is out and about. The idea is to provide access to county services and our partner agency services to people that are hard to reach in the community. We learned during COVID that not everyone is comfortable taking a bus downtown to JFS. They're not listening to the same messaging that some of us are. Like they're not watching the news. They're not listening to some of the radio stations that the rest of us are. They're hard to reach. Sometimes they're not English speakers, and we need to figure out a way to connect. And so the bus will allow us to be more flexible, more nimble, provide those services out in the community in a place where people are comfortable, like in a church or in a rec center, something like that. And then partner agencies are coming in, UC Health for one, Public Health for two, Restore Food Bank, Council on Aging, got a lot of partners that are helping us in this effort. And so it launched today, and I know it's going to be very popular throughout the county. So that's what I got, Bill. I know I tend to talk a little fast. I apologize, especially for those of you that are online, but I'm happy to take questions. And there are some big things. Convention Center District. Let me just talk about some of the really big stuff that we're doing in partnership with the city. Convention Center. I don't know if you all have been to the Convention Center lately, but it's looking a little rough and a little aged. And so we are doing a refresh. It's what I call a rebirth down there. City, county are doing it together. County owns the property or with the port where the Millennium stood. We had to get the Millennium down in order to do any of this stuff. The city owns the Convention Center, but we're looking at this area as a campus instead of, well, they've got this, we've got that. We need to do this together. And so 3CDC is helping us put together a package where we can redesign the district using inside space, outside space to bring in more conventions and more energy into that part of town, because it's just not there right now. So we're working with the city on that. There will be a lot of inclusion work when we get to the construction and some of the other things that we need to do to get this thing rolling. I think it's a good test case for us with the city to make sure that we can hit some of those numbers, our aspirational goals for inclusion and equity on that project. So I think it's a really great opportunity. And then we always talk about MSD and the Bengals because those are ongoing issues. And Bengals are doing really well right now. Houday, excited about that. But we've got a lease to negotiate. The lease expires in 2026. So we'll start negotiating yesterday. We got to get this together. I think sooner than later from my perspective. But we need to understand the asset that is the Bengals, is the Reds, is the energy they bring to the banks, but also have a much better deal for the taxpayers than we have had in the previous lease because we didn't do so well. And so we are looking, to say that we're looking forward to these negotiations might overstate it a little bit, but they need to happen and we need to be careful and very cognizant that the taxpayers need to get a good deal in the negotiations that we're going to undertake. And then MSD is an ongoing issue. I know this group has had some interest in this. We're still talking to the city about redesigning how MSD functions. And so we've offered two ideas actually to the city. The one did not move forward because we needed state legislation to do it, and there was no appetite for that in the legislature. Okay, so we went back to the drawing board. We've got a second idea on the board or on the drawing board right now. We're talking to the city and the judge about that. So it's ongoing. In the meantime, we have passed annual budgets for MSD. I'm happy to report that the sewer backup issue in this community, we're fully funding that. We've always fully funded it. But there's so many times when people call with sewer backups, it's not a sewer backup. It's overland flooding with some of these large rain events because of climate change. And it's going to, continue happening. And so we're trying to figure out, is there a role for us to play when it comes to overland flooding? Because people still have water in the basement. That people don't care about where the water came from, right? They just want it to be fixed. And so we're looking at, it's a big nut though, I will say. It's because it's Mother Nature dumping the water down a hill into somebody's basement. And so we need to be very careful about that. But we are looking into an impervious surface fee to kind of level set the rate structure because folks that have impervious surface, think about big parking lots, are dumping a lot of water into the system. It's stormwater, but it's still going into the system. We still need to treat it. And the residents who are using far less or dumping far less into the system are in many ways subsidizing that. And so we need to level set this. We are working on it. It is difficult to understand though, to what degree we charge more to some, to what degree others will benefit. And my idea would be then also to set aside a specific pot of money for this overland flooding piece. So as long as we're doing the rate recalculation, why wouldn't we put something in place where we put a pot of money, not only to remediate when people have water in basement, but also to eliminate the issue, right? Create some retention bases in places where we know where the hotspots are. So let's start to aggressively approach that. We're doing some of it through the stormwater division of Hamilton County. So it's not to say that nothing's happening in that space. It is. I think we need to get more aggressive, but it's going to take money. And nobody wants fee increases. We have fees flat. Gosh, they've been flat since I got to the commission in 17. We did increase fees this year, 3% increase. We have to respond to the consent decree projects that are in front of us from the federal government. We've been working down the reserve. The reason we were able to hold fees flat was because we had a pretty big buildup in the reserve. Why would you have a reserve? I mean, so we kept fees flat. We have spent down the reserve now, and we're at that tipping point where we need to be responsible and pay the debt service on the loans we've got out. But we need to put a little bit more money into the fund. So we're trying to gradually increase that so it's not a sticker shock to people. So 3% increase went was it unanimous? Could have been unanimous, I'm not sure. But anyway, we passed it at the commission. And so, and my concern is that that's going to keep happening. So this level setting then is going to be really important in the next couple of years. So now I'm finished, Bill. I think I've covered it all.
Well, thank you. You packed a lot of information.
I know.
I know Elizabeth has some questions.
I just one that you didn't cover, the solid waste issue.
Yeah.
I know you're in the solid waste district. There's the plan that recently, I guess it's out there for approval or ratification.
Yep.
There's been a lot of controversy in the community that it's heavy on expansion of Rumpke and light on diversionary efforts in solid waste. Could you just comment on that or your sense?
Yeah, so it's the solid waste plan. It's a 5-year plan that we've been working on. I'm relatively new to the committee, but I have looked at the plan and talked to the director. Todd Portune used to love this stuff. God love him. But anyway, so there is quite what we need to do in the county, and the city and the county are agreeable on this, is try to divert waste from the landfill. Right, whether it's organics, whether it's recyclables, whether and reduce trash. I mean, we all need to do our part. There are a number of different ways to do that. One of them, the biggest opportunity really exists in the commercial sector because that's where a lot of the waste is coming from. So we've got mini grants going out to help people understand how they can easily recycle in a business setting. So we're doing some of that. We're also talking about diversion of organics, which is a really big piece of this that we haven't done much on at all, and as a city or the county. And so we've talked to the city about this and said, we don't have a place right now to take the organics. Even if we could collect them, we've got nowhere to go with them. And so we need to either do it ourselves or work with the private sector to put together a facility that can accept the organics and then start moving to collect the organics. So we're studying that. There's this idea that the private sector, because there's money to be made there, might be willing to partner in this. We don't know if it would be county sided. We don't know where it would go, who's going to buy the land, all those kinds of things need to be worked out. But we're in conversations with the city right now to do that. So that's another strategy for diversion that we're very interested in. And then some of this more universal conversation. The city is very engaged in the conversation, but not all of the 48 jurisdictions outside the city are. Some of them don't do a lot of recycling. Some of them don't have mandatory trash collection. That's a problem. And so we need to engage with them. And the director is going out into these communities to say, how can we help you make sure that you're all doing what you need to do to keep trash recyclables out of the landfill? How can we help? What can we do? And Rumpke, is the place where that's where everything goes. There are other providers, but not many. And so we're trying to work with Rumpke too to say, hey, how can you be part of the solution as well? But the plan's got a lot in it. There has been some controversy around it. I'm sensitive to that, but there are 49 jurisdictions that we're dealing with here, and we're trying to get them all in kind of the same headspace about that and being in partnership with them as we move forward, because it's going to take all of us to do it. To give you the context of that, there are about 830,000 people in the county. 530,000 of them are outside the city of Cincinnati. So the majority are outside. We really need to get serious about those conversations. Thanks for the question. Yeah.
Matt, you have.
Matt's busy, but Matt's busy working over at CAA with rent relief. So rent relief is such a big issue. So Matt and I were just talking about this. It is, I know I was hoping it would peter out a little bit. So CAA and JFS with the county are the two big partners in this community providing for rent assistance. If you know anybody that still needs rent assistance, please pass them along to CAA. So this is a pitch for you and a pitch for us. Oh, you're okay. They're capping. Go to JFS, go to 513 relief. And it's not only rent assistance, it's mortgage assistance, it's other kinds of assistance. If people are still struggling or are newly struggling, they can reach out anytime and we will do our best to take care of them. But it's a real effort. Michael Patton is our new director and he's been pretty aggressive with this outreach. And so we're doing all that we can to make sure people's needs are met in the community.
No questions.
Denise, we've been doing these forums for a long time, and we've had a parade of county commissioners come through, and I would have to say that we started, 40 years ago, I guess?
Oh, my.
The idea that the county would be involved in anything other than roads, jail, courts was beyond their comprehension. I sat in a commissioner's meeting one time when Shabbat was a commissioner, and the idea of using federal housing money for housing with community action agency was anathema to it. I mean, he voted against it after he realized that the other two were going to vote for it. I think the Bengals was the first step that the county commissioners took outside their portfolio. Are other counties in the state of Ohio, or most counties or urban counties, doing the same sorts of things in housing and human services and addiction changes as Hamilton County is?
So I love that question because you've reminded everyone of what the county does, right? The county, outside of all the stuff I just talked about, the county runs the courthouse, the jail, in JFS, environmental. Sorry.
Don't forget county roads.
The roads and bridges with the engineer. Western Hills Viaduct is funded, by the way, everyone, and the city and the county participated. Brent's Bench is happening. So we've made a lot of progress on those fronts too. And it has to be green, right? We have to make sure that pedestrians and bikes can have access to the Western Hills Viaduct in particular because of Lick Run coming online. But thank you for the question. It's because it's a reminder of where we were. And remember, when you're cash strapped, you can't do anything outside of all the stuff. And for a while there, before I got there, for 5 years in a row, our employees didn't get a cost of living increase. What? I mean, who wants to work for the county? Raise your hand. Nobody does, right? And so we were delivering the very, very basic services. We weren't doing any diversion. We weren't doing anything creative in the Justice Center. We weren't doing any diversion in the court system. And so I feel like when I got on board, the county shifted from the Republicans to the Democrats. And I don't mean to be partisan, but it's part of the equation. So when I got on, Portune and I became the majority. Well, that's a real different majority than what we had in decades in the past. And so Portune, and I know I've told you all this, he had a list a mile long, and I mean this long, of all the things he wanted to do. And he was feeling stressed to get stuff done because it was pent up energy. And so I was his partner. And we started along this road of doing things in a different way in the county that dignified the work of our employees, but also did some outreach into the county, into the jurisdictions. And so I walked around to all 49 jurisdictions, literally went to every single one with my menu of opportunity to remind people that we're partners. with them, and we can do things together and and let's have a dialogue. Let's start talking to each other. And so it was a culture shift there. And so when we talk about the Addiction Response Coalition, which to be fair, started under Greg Hartman. It wasn't as active as it is now, but it started there. And so we have launched that. A Commission on Women and Girls, of course, Fortune did a lot, and we still are doing a lot on infant mortality. Again, something that is that county? Well, shouldn't it be? You know, and so we are doing a lot, and we have really turned a corner in Hamilton County. Other counties, Franklin County does a lot. They've got a lot more money than we do. Their taxes are much higher. Remember, we're spending quite a bit on stadiums. I mean, everybody remember. So 0.5, the 0.25 I told you about earlier. So we're spending 0.5 on the 2 stadiums. We're only spending 0.75 on county government from the sales tax. I mean, it's insane how little we have to work with. Franklin County has probably double that. And so so we look to them and say, okay, what can we do that Franklin County is doing and that we can afford? And I just had lunch with John O'Grady, who's on their county commission last week, and said, hey, John, what about this? What about this? What about this? I brought my staff with me. We interacted with his staff. Yeah, we can learn from those guys. Cuyahoga is sometimes ahead of us on stuff, sometimes not. But yeah, we're learning from them. But we are now in a position to do it. Whereas a few years ago, we were barely treading water. We just couldn't look up. And so it's really changed now in the county. And I will, to be fair, the federal money has helped also in when it comes to some of the money or the support that we've been able to offer, say, to a nonprofit sector in this community, that the folks that are helping the people that are really struggling, the federal dollars allowed us to do that. We could not have done that otherwise. So it was Joe Biden's administration that made all that happen. But yeah, it's a different look for the county. And remember, when I got there, first woman elected to the county commission, I now sit next to Alicia Reese and Stephanie Dumas. So it's all women, 2 women of color, and it's just a very different feel and with different lens and different perspective on how we should do our jobs.
We did a project in Dayton once, and we're talking with the Montgomery County Commissioner and ask about how is Hamilton County doing on some of these things. The laughing response was, when Bob Taft shows up at the Urban County Commissioners Group, we send him down the hall to the rural county.
Well, right, and because when you think, let's just give you a little bit of background on that. So there are 88 counties in Ohio. Only 8 of them are urban, right? The rest of them are rural or suburban. And so when I walk into that room, I walked in with Kevin Boyce when I was first elected. So Kevin Boyce may have been the first African-American elected to the county commission. He was elected in Franklin County. If he wasn't the first, he was close to it. And so, and there aren't that many women either. And so you walk into that room, it's like, oh, have we gone to the wrong room? Because so many county commissioners are from rural areas. They've got very different priorities and different structures. Some of them don't even have county administrators. So it's a whole different ballgame in some of these communities. But where we can learn, Montgomery County is another one where I have a very close relationship with those county commissioners. And so, we're always trying to learn from one another. But Franklin County is the one that's really doing a lot of trend setting. And so we're trying to work with them. Chris, remind me of some of the initiatives that we talked about with John.
Their housing trust.
Well, some of it was related to immigration. We're trying to.
Council, we're looking at maybe setting up a similar model down here. Discussion about electric vehicles.
So let's pause for a second. So the immigration question is very important to this community because I don't know if you're aware, but the census data indicates that we have had an increase in population in Hamilton County. Much of that is driven by immigration. And so we've got new Americans coming into our community. And what are we doing about it? We need to welcome the new Americans into this community, make sure they feel welcome, make sure we're listening to them, and make sure they're successfully entering the workforce and have stable housing. And we're providing transportation. And so our idea is to create a council where, because in Hamilton County, that folks are coming from all different countries. And so their perspectives are different, their needs are different. And so we are talking about a council where these different populations collectively sit, and then they would make recommendations to the county commissioners as to how we can do a better job of being more welcoming, but also the workforce piece is really important. And so having things that are bilingual. Well, there's a revelation, right? I mean, we should be doing this. And so, and Franklin County is doing it. They're ahead of us. And so we met with John and said, you know, what are you guys doing? What is your council? How is it structured so that we can do something that replicates that here in Hamilton County? So those are the kinds of things that there is. That county government? Well, it's not written in the charter, but yeah, this is part of the job of being a county commissioner, is making sure some of these boxes are checked and knowing where the priorities are. And unless you're talking to the folks that are moving in, you don't know where the priorities are. So you got to talk to them. Yeah.
Time, Bill.
You've done a marvelous job, and I know you got to get through.
I do have to get to my meeting. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you. Thank you all online. Thank you for joining.
Clock is unprecedented.
Yeah, I can see that. That's. Thank you.
You want to take a lunch with you?
Oh, no,
Oh, did you?
Thanks.
Appreciate you.
I did just see.
Noticed the leak report this morning was a little
Do you kick out of that?
Yeah. Yeah, you think you got that? Yeah. Where you guys going?
Well, you just.
Where are they coming?
Yes.
Yeah, all of it.
You're going down to
It's hard to.
the 7:31.
I mean, you can.
You started there. You did. All right, thanks. Really appreciate it. Yeah. Pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Are we finished here?
Yes.
Okay.
And the number.
Yes.
So many.